All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Welcome to a very special Memorial Day edition of This Week in Missouri Politics. We're very delighted this week to be joined by two leaders in our state. One, a candidate for governor, the other one, David Steelman, a Republican leader. But first, we're joined by Senator Mike Parson, a senator from Southwest Missouri running for governor. Senator Parson, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Scott, good to be here. It's a great day out there, and it's a good day to be here in St. Louis and be on your show.
Well, let's start with the campaign for governor. It seems to me like this campaign, you've been rumored to be a statewide candidate in the Missouri Times and other places for months. It seems like the real start of this campaign came after Auditor Schweik's passing. You gave a speech on the Senate floor talking about the tone of politics. Can you remind our viewers about that and about that speech and how the campaign may have evolved from there?
Well, there's no doubt. When I made that speech on the Senate floor, it was because I was frustrated the way we had been doing things, and we kept doing things in our party, about the way we were handling campaigns, what we were doing to people as individuals. And I thought it was time to stand up and say something and just tell people we need to go in a different direction as a party. And I don't think we are people in the Republican Party that are really out there to try to destroy people's integrity, destroy their honor of people who they are. Most of us have built a lifetime to achieve those goals. And for people to destroy that just for the simple name of the political arena because of money or whatever it takes to win, we need to change directions of that. And I don't think there's any question that Missouri is pretty well known nationally that we have tough Republican primaries that have probably went over the top. And I think in Tom's case, with all the things that occurred to him, some of the things that were said, frankly, had nothing to do with facts, had nothing to do with figures, had nothing to do with anything other than trying to destroy somebody's character. And I think we as Missourians, we as Christians, are much better people than that. We should not be treating one another that, regardless what's in the political arena or whether it's outside of that political arena. But yeah, it meant a great deal to me, and to stand up and to say we need to change the way we do politics, and I truly believe people want that.
It's probably not a coincidence that it ended up with Senator Danforth and former Secretary Danforth endorsing your candidacy for governor.
You know, we were glad to have Senator Danforth do that. I've known the senator for a long time. I've admired the man from his early days and his service, and it was an honor for him to come forward and to endorse our campaign on that.
Well, let's talk about you and your record in public service. You're a former sheriff, right?
That's correct, Sheriff of Polk County.
A little bit of a different resume than most people running for governor.
You know, I'm going to say that probably most people has not had a humbler beginning than what I've had of growing up on a small farm in one of the poorest counties in the state. But I've had a wonderful career. I've been able to accomplish so much in my lifetime. My service in the United States Army and the Military Police Corps was probably the thing that I got started with, and I earned what honor, what integrity, what serving this country really means when you put that flag of the United States of America on your sleeve, what that really means, and to be dedicated to people back home. And you know, my career as Sheriff of Polk County, I started in a humble beginning there as far as a sheriff's department that was an old country-style sheriff, and we made it one of the most professional organizations in the state of Missouri. And, you know, being in a small business guy, working in service stations is what I did. You know, fix tires and pump gas. And not that that's one of the high jobs in the state, but it's who I was. And my family, my wife, my two children, and my grandkids, it's what I do for those and for the future generations of the state of Missouri. And no secret, in my background is an ag background.
Let's talk about that right
Sure.
quick. You were the face, the leading public official behind the Right to Farm movement that was successful. Tell us about how that's helping your campaign for governor.
Well, I think the Right to Farm campaign, which I didn't realize at the time how significant it is to the governor's race, but I felt like I was running statewide last year when we were trying to promote Right to Farm in the state of Missouri. But agriculture is the #1 industry in the state of Missouri, and we have to protect that. We get so many outside special interest groups from outside the borders of Missouri trying to attack that industry and trying to change a lifestyle that most of us has grown up with. And it's not always about a cow. It's not always about row crops. It's really about a way of life in Missouri. It's about where most of us began. And I believe the things you learn in that kind of environment, in an agriculture environment, are something that you pass down from generation to generation. And I want to be able to protect that for people's children and for their grandchildren to have the same privileges a lot of us have had to enjoy in that arena. And doing the Right to Farm, again, changing the Constitution of the United States, or Constitution of Missouri, I'm sorry, is a big deal.
Let's walk through your other issue positions. Taxes. You supported the tax cuts in the past. Do Missourians, do you feel like there's a guy that got off work Memorial Day weekend, looked at his pay stub and said, I did not send enough money to Jeff City?
If there's somebody out there, I haven't met him. I haven't met him. And, I think that's one thing we got to realize, that as the governor of the state of Missouri, you're really going to have to take a look at the tax codes of Missouri and how we're going to do that differently. Because, unfortunately, over the years, any of us has been in business, any of us has been around for a little while, it almost makes honest people dishonest because of the tax codes, the burden that we put on these people to pay taxes. And I think there is ways to change that they don't have to feel like they're under that burden. And when you look at a pay stub and all of a sudden you realize the first 4 months of a year that you work are paid in taxes.
And it seems like you have a bureaucracy that's just bizarre. You have one of the highest paid state employees in the state, Tim Wolf, the head of the University of Missouri system, out saying you should pay more taxes to feather his own nest. I mean, it seems like this bureaucracy sort of went sideways somehow.
Well, and over the years it has. It has. And one of the things that I think later on in the campaign that you're going to find out that we're going to roll out a plan of how we're really going to change things. And if you keep using the same old system that we've been using, you're not going to change very much. But you're really going to have to think outside the box a little bit. And maybe you don't need to be introducing 2,000 bills a year in the state legislature. Maybe when you were working on a $26.1 billion budget, maybe you need to spend a lot more time on that to see how really efficient we are in Missouri. And I think those are some of the things that you're going to see in this campaign, in my campaign, that we're going to take a look at outside the box and really try to change the way we do Missouri.
Let's talk about abortion. You've always been a staunch pro-life advocate, I understand?
I've always been supportive of the abortion issues in this state. Matter of fact, we probably passed some of the strongest abortion laws in the United States since I've been in the legislative branch for the 10 years I've been in there. But more importantly, besides the legislative side of it, it's my Christian's belief where I stand on the abortion issue. So I was, pro-life long before I ever come to Jeff City. Mm-hmm. And I believe that every person, every individual has a right to life.
Talk about the Second Amendment. You've been a supporter of the Second Amendment. Why are you the right person? There's a large part of the Republican primary that votes on that issue. Why are you the person that's the most effective on that?
Because I think it's one of your basic fundamental rights in this country, that you have the right to bear arms. And I've always been a huge protector of that. Matter of fact, when I helped one of the sponsors of the Castle Doctrine, where people now have the right in Missouri to protect your property and your personal belongings and your family if you have intruders in there, you have a right to your property and your privacy and your family. And to protect that is basically just a constitutional right that's been passed down for generations and generations. And we need to continue that. And I'm proud to be a lifetime member of the NRA with an A rating with them. And I'm always going to be supportive of that issue on the Second Amendment.
Let's stick up our sleeves for a moment and talk about this Republican primary. So you have 3 candidates, one the former Speaker Catherine Hanaway, businessman John Bruner, and a former Navy SEAL Eric Greitens, all from generally the St. Louis area. You're from Southwest Missouri, a treasure trove of Republican votes. Right. Is that your advantage, or walk our viewers through why you could win this primary?
Well, I think geographics, one, is a huge advantage. being from Southwest Missouri, we all know that that's rich in the Republican primary votes. The second thing being is probably my agriculture ties that no other candidate has. Nobody will be able to bring that to the table. And the other thing I want to add with that, when I talk about the agriculture side of it, is I've always been a huge supporter of the urban issues, whether it's Ford Motor Company, whether it was the Boeing that we were trying to help, different things. Matter of fact, starting an economic development office in the nation of Israel that really had a huge effect on the St. Louis arena. I think I'm the only candidate that can really bring those two together. And I truly understand for Missouri to be successful, you need rural and urban to be working together, going in the same direction, because that's really what makes Missouri it's what's going to be the success of Missouri in the future, is bringing those two together and protect that.
Let's say 14 months from now, you're the winner of a grueling, long-fought Republican primary. There's an old George Jones song about the winner losing on. If you happen to win this very challenging primary, you get Chris Koster waiting for you at this Democratic nominee, terrific candidate. The question I think we would have is, how do you beat him without going negative against him?
Well, you know what? First of all, I've been pretty open. I'm going to run a positive campaign. I'm going to run on who Mike Parson is. I'm going to run on all those values that I told you earlier about. And I'm going to talk about my lifetime experiences. That's why I'm going to talk about it in a campaign. I don't care who the opposition is, whether it's in a primary or in a general. We're going to put our best foot forward to convince people we're the right person to vote for. Chris Koster will be a tough, tough opponent. Let's face it. I mean, everybody knows that. But I think I'm going to match up with him better simply because of my experience. He's going to say he's been in the Senate. I've been in the Senate. He's going to say he's the chief law enforcement officer of the state because he's Attorney General. I'm going to say I've been on the streets for over 20 years with a law enforcement career. I'm a family man.
It might be the one thing that's better than all prosecutorial no politics. You might have been in a courtroom in a suit. You've actually been on the front lines.
Well, I think in our country and Missouri not too long ago, we see the importance of having law enforcement on the streets. And those people are out there working every day trying to make life better for other people and trying to protect people. And I think you have to realize the importance of that versus in his role as an elected official wearing a suit and tie. And I can do both. I can be on the street working on it, or I can wear this suit and tie and do my job in both ways. And I think that'll be an outstanding matchup. And I think by all means that I can beat Chris Koster in a general election. I think the ag background will be an advantage for me. And I just think being a veteran will be an advantage for me. I just think there'll be a lot of things that you're going to come to see. When people get a chance to get to know me a little better, they're going to find out who Mike Parson is and why I'm going to win that general election.
Well, one thing's for sure, that general election will be very fun to cover, and we hope to have you both here on This Week in Missouri Politics to discuss it. Senator, I want to thank you for your service, not just on Memorial Day, but for all the time for your service in the military.
Thank you.
Especially on this Memorial Day edition.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with you.
Thank you, sir. And we'll be right back with David Steelman.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're now joined, not by our opinion maker panel this week, but by a man who has so many opinions he makes up his own panel. Former legislator, current attorney, longtime star of the Republican Party, David Steelman.
Well, thanks, Scott. I'm glad to be here. I think what you do with your coverage of Jefferson City is really important, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Well, thank you so much. I want to start off asking you what you thought about Senator Parson's interview.
Well, first of all, I like Mike Parson a lot. Who wouldn't? I mean, he's sincere, he's honest. The thing about Mike, I think people are underestimating him as a candidate. In the last decade, when there have been tough issues, Mike Parson's been at the fulcrum. It's not sexy, but this last term repair and maintenance doesn't sound like a big deal, but our state buildings are falling down, our university buildings are falling down. Hard to pass that through a Republican legislature, and Mike got it done. So he's going to be a force in the primary, and if he wins the primary, he'll be a force in November.
Well, add up the parts of the state. You've done it more than I have, but you have 3 candidates right now from St. Louis, one kind of from Cape, St. Louis, and Peter Kinder. And then you have one from Southwest Missouri, vote-rich, Republican primary vote-rich, Southwest Missouri. Is that his ace in the hole?
If nobody else gets in, and depending on who the race is about, it gives him a tremendous advantage. He's in. Catherine Hanaway is in. Eric Greitens, I believe, is definitely in. I think Peter Kinder's in. And then
No Bruner?
Bruner might be in, but you take that, the geography is in Parsons' favor. Now, there's a lot more to it than geography, but the geography is important, and that'll be part of his campaign.
So if he does win that campaign, does he win a general against Chris Koster? He said he's not going to campaign negatively. Most folks think that's how you would beat him.
Well, first of all, what is negative? I would not expect to see personalities raised in that campaign. I think Senator Parsons' word is good. But you do have issues, and you have to point out issues. And he and Attorney General Koster will have some differences. But let's, right now, if somebody says guess right or die, you're going to bet that Attorney General Koster will be the next governor. And he's a tremendously talented candidate. He was a great Attorney General. But it's more than a year, Scott. You and I have seen it. 1991, we all thought Bill Webster would be governor. We all thought Claire McCaskill would get defeated. Things happen in politics, so you never know.
Let's take those statewide races. You've ran statewide yourself. The last time the Republicans had a ticket, maybe as strong as they do now, was 92. It seemed like they were going to continue on their statewide dominance, and then the unforeseen happened and hurt your campaign. When you look at this crop of statewide folks, from Kurt Schaefer to Eric Schmidt, to Jay Ashcroft, Will Krause, the Secretary of State's race, what do those guys need to do to win, even in a year where the governor is going to be tight?
Talent matters. And Kurt Schaefer, and that's a name, it's not a statewide name yet, but it will be. I've been watching Missouri politics for a long time, and Kurt Schaefer is as talented and hardworking and smart as I have ever seen in the General Assembly. And I'm including some of the legends, like people won't remember it, Cliffy Jones, from St. Louis County, and someone like him can actually rise above the tide. Now it's hard, but it can be done. But what they're going to have to do is, I hate to say it, they're going to have to raise money, but they're also going to have to learn to relate across the state. Different people in this state, which is so diverse, don't view things the same, and they're going to have to adjust to that. I think some of them will adjust easily. I think some of them will have more trouble.
Well, I mean, I would say a lot of the rural folks, though, the issues they actually vote on, they probably do view pretty much the same. I guess how you win those St. Charles, Jefferson, Greene counties, at the end of the day, Clay County. Well, how you put together that winning coalition is the suburbs.
Well, but see, some people forget that. And actually, I think that's part of what Catherine Hanaway, why she lost the Secretary of State race. They get used to running in certain areas. You have to get those votes in St. Charles while you don't lose votes in Southwest Missouri. And those issues aren't always the same. The evangelical vote, which is how Todd Akin got nominated, is much stronger in some areas of the state than it is in others. And we don't know how that'll balance out yet. How much money does John Bruner put in his race?
Sure.
We don't know. He puts in $5 million and he runs negative ads on one candidate. I don't think John Bruner will be elected governor. I don't think he'll win the primary. But if he puts enough money in, he can certainly affect the primary. How much money does Rex Sinkfield put in Catherine Hanaway's race? She's got some real problems in her record. A vote against conceal and carry, support for the public funding of the stadiums. But if she gets enough money, who does she pick? I think Eric Greitens is a wild card like nobody's ever seen in Missouri politics. You and I have talked about it. It is very hard for a neophyte to run and win. But frankly, I don't think we've ever seen a man like Eric Greitens run for office in Missouri. He's an extraordinary human being. So how does that work out? We don't know, but it'll be fun to watch.
Wouldn't it be interesting to see the op research file and how thick that is on Eric Greitens? One of the reasons folks usually don't jump into a race this size is you go through those lower races and they pick out, well, you said this and you may have supported this Democrat or whatever. The opposition research file may be the tale on how well he does.
Well, and of course, first of all, by op research, we're talking euphemistically about the people who are dumpster diving for dirt. Let's be honest. But this is going to be a 4-, 5-, 6-way race. How much can you focus on that? We haven't seen this many strong candidates in this varied a primary. How much can you focus on any one candidate's op research file?
Is it a sign of strength or weakness that there's this many viable candidates running for governor?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I would have to say both. It shows that we don't have a lead outstanding candidate. But any one of those 5, and particularly I think the ones that are underrated on the Republican side are Mike Parson and Eric Greitens. Either of those 2, I believe, could turn into an outstanding candidate.
Let's talk about some issues. You've served in the General Assembly. You've, I'm sure, seen the Senate grind a little bit. Maybe not quite like this. Doing a PQ on right to work. I followed your career being a South Missourian myself. What is your opinion on what they should have done on right to work and what they did do?
Here's why in my opinion, there's just my opinion, Scott. What made right to work so tough is that both sides are right. Now think about that. Not that both wrong, both are right. There is no question the studies show that this state is at a competitive disadvantage with compulsory union membership. No question about it. On the other hand, the studies also show that right to work states have lower wages, that they have more worker safety concerns. It just it struck me one of the things that Senator Parson said was problems are there to be solved. If the proponents of right to work would listen to what the opponents had to say, and the opponents would listen to what the proponents had to say, these problems can be solved. Maybe you pass right to work and tie it to some sort of job or wage performance. There's no reason you couldn't. Or you sunset it. Or you listen to what people like Tim Green, who you had on last week, another fine public servant who I agree with 1 out of 10 times. But you listen to their concerns, and when they say we're worried about wages, you don't say, well, don't be, like the proponents did. You say, we need this for a competitive advantage. What can we do about that? Can we put money into worker retraining so you can get those higher jobs? Can we tie it into wage growth? You need to think about the minimum wage when you do this. Those are how you solve problems. And what disappointed me, and there's been some real good leadership in the General Assembly, what disappointed me is that neither side, neither majority or minority, really tried to say, what are your concerns and how can we solve this problem?
We, before we go into this, the previous question is a motion in the Senate that will take, you stop debate. It's been done a handful of times throughout state history. It's really never been done on an issue Republicans were on the other side of, one party or the other. So we had emails, and I appreciate all the emails. The previous question is a thing that's very rarely done. It's very rarely done in the House, done every day. The Senate's very rarely done to end debate. In the Senate, every senator is supposed to be able to talk as long as they want. This is a method the majority used to cut off that debate. We got some emails last week from some of our viewers, which we appreciate, asking about the previous question. If you were in the Senate, do you think it was a good thing to cut off debate on a bill at which members of the Republican Party were against?
I think the previous question in the Missouri Senate is a failure of the legislative process. It's so inside baseball, people are going to watch and say, nobody can detest the previous question. I detest the previous question in the Missouri Senate. In my life, the Missouri Senate has been where you did things, like I just mentioned on right to work, where you listen because you have to, because of the previous question, where you solve problems, where you accommodate. If it is moved, it is the majority and minority's fault both, and it means that they didn't listen.
Well, going forward, Ron Richard has outpaced most people's expectations as far as running the Senate.
I think Senate leadership's been great. I still detest the previous question.
Do you think this is a sign of more things to come, or will this be a one-off on this one issue?
I hope. It's a one-off on one issue. It is so emotional. It is so politically charged. There are so many campaign contributions on both sides that I just think that the Missouri Senate went temporarily insane.
Senator Sifton seemed to shine last week, though, in shutting down the Senate. I mean, after the previous question was moved, Senator Sifton had the whole body turned. I don't think anyone knew exactly what to do. So, I mean, I think that might be a foreshadowing of if this is something that goes on the next year. Senator Sifton showed almost one person with a great knowledge of the rules can twist the body in on itself.
Well, and that can be abused by the minority, but it goes back. This is way too inside. But the previous question and the fact it was not used in the Missouri Senate has, I think, been very important to the development of this state, to listening to accommodating and to solving problems. I hope that the Missouri Senate goes back to doing that.
Another thing, you, speaking of the Missouri Senate, they confirmed you, that Governor Nixon appointed you as a curator at the University of Missouri. You were confirmed by the Senate. Are you enjoying it? What are you working on?
Well, I love it. You know, it's interesting, though. As you know, I ran against Governor Nixon. And at that time in '92, everyone was saying, oh, my gosh, this is the nastiest race we've ever seen. And he and I laugh often at how much more nasty races have become because we were friends almost immediately thereafter. And now you see these hard feelings drag on. I think that's another problem. Here's what I've learned. Putting a government that works together is a jigsaw puzzle, and it's got a lot of pieces. And I don't think there's any silver bullet. For instance, I don't think right to work is a silver bullet. I don't think a tax cut is a silver bullet. But one of those pillars is education. And what I have learned is that the old idea of K through 12 and then higher ed, that is yesterday's news. We are in a global competitive market where K through 14 is a minimum. K through 16 is almost a necessity, and on. And that is something that this state has got to figure out and understand that our kids have to get those educations. They have to get access. It cannot be too expensive. It still has to be excellent. And like I said, there's a lot of parts to that puzzle, but right now, for instance, over the last 10 years, we were 42nd in job growth. That's not good enough for Missouri. Education is going to be one of those pillars we're going to have to solve, and access to higher ed is one of those problems we're going to have to solve, or we're going to go down, not up.
Lastly, I want to ask you about your family. Obviously, your wife, Sarah Steelman, former state treasurer, former state senator, your son, Sam. Tell us what the family's up to.
Well, my oldest son is in law school. I didn't think I was going to have any more lawyers, but he's in law school, doing well. Sarah is a grandparent. I had a grandchild by my first marriage, but our middle son, Joe, just had a son named Graham, which is really the most exciting development of the last year. And my youngest son, Michael, is transferring to Mizzou. And right now, this week, he's in New York, and tonight he performs with the choir in Carnegie Hall. So everything's great.
Well, congratulations very much. And I want to thank you for coming on This Week in Missouri Politics with us. One last thing I wanted to ask you. What is the one issue that Missouri can face that Missouri can change right now to benefit the state?
Deal with the tax structure. Mike Parson was right. We've got a bizarre tax structure. I'm not saying I happen to be a low tax guy. I happen to believe in consumption taxes over income taxes. But it is Byzantine what we do. And the way this tax structure works, it actually makes special interest favors more valuable, which I think makes the system work less. So that's my main.
Dave Steelman, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. And thank you for letting me talk about my family.
I think most folks are interested. That'll be it for This Week in Missouri Politics this week. I want to say one quick thing. I want to thank all of our veterans, especially on Memorial Day. Senator Parson and all the other veterans out watching, we're very humbled and appreciative of your service. And like we all want to look for ways to give back. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you next week on our normal time at 11 o'clock after This Week with George Stephanopoulos here on This Week in Missouri Politics.